Chapter 61. Jiang Ziya, come out and face your death on this day. Yuanshi Tianzhen was in seclusion within the Jade Void Palace. Though he claimed to be meditating, in truth, Yuanshi's mind was far from tranquil. His thoughts were consumed by Gu Changsheng. Since Gu Changsheng's sudden appearance, Yuanshi had been obsessively striving to break through his current level, eager to settle past scores with him. However, the more he focused on this goal, the more elusive progress became, and Gu Changsheng gradually became a demon in his heart. Yuanshi frowned deeply. As a SAA-NT of the heavenly Tao, he hadn't advanced in his cultivation for countless millennia. Yet Gu Changsheng had somehow reached the fifth heaven of the primordial golden immortal realm. The fact that a disciple of Tongtian could surpass him in power was something Yuanshi simply could not accept. Enough, he thought. I'll wait for my teacher to deal with Gu Changsheng. At that moment, a figure appeared outside the Jade Void Palace, and a panicked voice followed. Master, Master, something terrible has happened. Jiang Ziya rushed into the palace, his voice filled with urgency. However, Yuanshi's expression turned cold. With a wave of his hand, he sent Jiang Ziya flying out. How dare you panic like this? What kind of example are you setting for the Chan sect? Jiang Ziya's unseemly behavior was indeed a disgrace to the sect. Moments later, Jiang Ziya returned, his face ashen. This time, he wisely kept silent, and stood before Yuanshi, waiting. But Yuanshi, displeased by this new silence, barked, "Speak up." Jiang Ziya hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and said in a serious tone, "Master, for reasons unknown, Shengon Bao has led a force claiming to restore Dixin, and has already taken Ziki city. Previously, the two Western saints had promised Yuanshi that Kong Xuan would arrive within 3 days. Yet, on the second day, the Jie sect had already made its move. After Jiang Ziya's forces had captured Dikoji, most of Ziki's people had moved into the city, leaving Ziki itself defenseless. Although the soldiers gathered by Dixin were few, Jiang from the Jie sect had been dispatched, and with her presence, no ordinary quasi-saint could stand against them. As a result, Shun Gongbao and his allies had easily taken Ziki city. From there, Shun Gongbao's path would mirror Jiang Ziya's earlier campaign, from Ziki to Jiejiao, through Sisei Pass, past Jiepai Pass, and on to Tongtian and Lingtong Pass, before finally reaching Keoji. If Shun Gongbao and Dixin managed to reclaim Keoji, all of Jiang Ziya's efforts in the campaign against the Shan would be in vain. The fall of Ziki would cause the Chan sect to suffer the same fate due to the laws of karma. Thus, when King Wu sought Jiang Ziya's help, Jiang Ziya immediately came to Yuanshi. He wasn't foolish. He knew that the so-called restoration of Dixin by Shun Gongbao had to be part of the Jie sect's grand plan. If he went alone, it would be a death sentence. Yuanshi frowned upon hearing Jiang Ziya's report. Jiang was no weakling. Among the 12 golden immortals of the Jade Void, only Guang Chegs could barely hold his own against her, but Guang Chegs was still recovering from severe injuries. With Random having defected to the Western sect, the only person left in the Chan sect who could fight Jiang was the Antarctic immortal. However, Yuanshi had already decided that the Chan sect would not exert much effort in this upcoming battle. He would send someone just to maintain appearances, and then wait for Kong Zhuan's arrival. With a casual wave of his hand, Yuanshi said, "Go fetch the immortal Huanglong, and take him with you to Jiejiao." Jiang Ziya was stunned. Immortal Huanglong was known as the weakest among the 12 golden immortals, often called the Three-Nose Immortal: no disciples, no treasures, and no victories. He had been captured by the Jie sect before. Jiang Ziya hesitated, unsure of what to say. "Master, immortal Huanglong." Although he was dissatisfied, Jiang Ziya couldn't openly criticize Huanglong, so he merely hinted at his concerns. Fortunately, Yuanshi understood what Jiang Ziya meant and said, "You and Huanglong go to Jiejiao and delay them as much as possible. Kong Xuan will arrive tomorrow to assist you. With Kong Xuan there, even Jiang won't be able to break through Jiejiao. Also, tell Kong Xuan to kill as many Jie sect disciples as possible." Filling the investiture of the gods was the task assigned to him by Hogjan. Realizing his master's intent, Jiang Ziya nodded and turned to leave. But just as he was about to exit the Jade Void Palace, Yuanshi called out to him, again, his voice stern, "And Shun Gongbao, if there's an opportunity, put him on the list. Originally, after the successful campaign against the Shang, Yuanshi had planned Ned to punish Shen Gongbao by imprisoning him in the North Sea, intending to release him later. After all, the plan to send Shen Gongbao to the Shang had to remain secret. But now, Shen Gongbao had betrayed the sect, so he could not be spared. Jiang Ziya acknowledged the order and left directly. Yuanshi snorted coldly. Gu Changsheng, do you think you are clever, helping Di Xin and luring my disciples out? The Chan sect can also send Jie sect disciples to their doom. You are not just up against the Chan sect. We shall see how this plays out. After returning Jiejiao with Immortal Huanglong, Jiang Ziya summoned Never, Yan Jian, and the other third-generation disciples of the Chan sect. Relying on Immortal Huanglong alone would not suffice to hold the line. Regardless, they couldn't afford to lose the momentum. Fortunately, after capturing Ziki, Shen Gongbao's forces did not advance immediately, but took time to rest. The next day arrived quickly. At noon on the second day, dust rose in the distance as Shen Gongbao's restoration force arrived and set up camp near Jiejiao. Inside the command tent, Shen Gongbao discussed the situation with Jiang. Shen Gongbao spoke in a deep voice. Based on what I know of Jiang Ziya, there should be members of the Chan sect at Jiejiao. Capturing Ziki had been easy because the city lacked defenders, most being ordinary people. But now, Jiejiao stood as the gateway to Keoji, marking the start of the restoration campaign. Jiang's beautiful face showed a trace of coldness, as she responded, I've already used my divine sense to scan the area. There are no golden immortals or quasi-saints at Jiejiao. I suggest we probe their defenses. With Jiang's strength, few in the Chan sect could match her. If it hadn't been for Laozi and Yuanshi breaking the Nine Bends Yellow River array, Jiang wouldn't have been defeated. Shen Gongbao nodded in agreement. Very well, but be cautious. The Jie sect already had few disciples left and do not afford any more losses. Jiang replied calmly, Don't worry. I have the means provided by senior brother Gu. With that, Jiang's figure flickered as she flew out of the camp and appeared above Jiejiao. The next moment, her cold voice rang out across the battlefield. Jiang Ziya, come out and face your death.
Chapter 62. Don't try to teach me. At Jiejiao, Jiang Ziya, Immortal Huanglong, Enraged, and others waited within their camp. While Enraged and the others seemed calm, Jiang Ziya was growing increasingly anxious. According to his master's words, today was the day Kang Xuan was supposed to reveal. Yet, it was already noon, and there was still no sign of Kang Xuan. In the distance, Shen Gongbao's army had already arrived. If it were just Shen Gongbao, Jiang Ziya would have no fear. But Jiang was with them. During the campaign against the Shang, Jiang Ziya had witnessed firsthand the power of Jiang's Nine Bends Yellow River formation. Although she was alone this time, her cultivation was still formidable. At the very least, no one at Jiejiao could match her. Jiang Ziya had already made up his mind. If Jiang made a move, he would abandon Jiejiao rather than risk his life for it. As Jiang Ziya was contemplating his next move, Jiang's cold voice rang out from outside the camp. Hearing this, both Jiang Ziya and Immortal Huanglong looked at each other. Jiang Ziya, what should we do now? Asked Immortal Huanglong. After all, he knew he was no match for Jiang, and he couldn't understand why their master had sent him along with Jiang Ziya. Jiang Ziya felt a wave of frustration. You're asking me? Who am I supposed to ask? Jiang was already challenging them, yet Kang Xuan was nowhere to be seen. Could the Western sect be setting them up? Despite his doubts, Jiang Ziya knew he had to go out and face the situation. They couldn't just remain silent and flee. Let's go out and see what's happening, Jiang Ziya said seriously. He wanted to know how many men Shen Gongbao had brought and how many Jia's disciples were involved. As Jiang Ziya, Immortal Huanglong, and the others emerged from the tent, they immediately saw Jiang standing in the sky. Before Jiang Ziya could speak, Jiang's beautiful eyes flashed with anger, and she raised her hand. A burst of golden light shot toward Jiang Ziya as she hurled the primordial golden dipper at him. Jiang Ziya, last time you escaped because of Yuanxi. This time, let's see who can save you. The deaths of Zhao Gongming, Big Xiao, and King Xiao were all blamed on the Chan sect. Even if the three were to be resurrected, this grudge still needed to be avenged. Seeing Yang Xiao directly attacking him, Jiang Ziya panicked. He knew he was no match for her. In his desperation, he summoned the divine whip to defend himself. In the sky, the divine whip collided with the primordial golden dipper with a loud crash, but after just one clash, the light on the divine whip dimmed. Although both were top-tier innate spiritual treasures, the divine whip was too specialized, and Jiang Ziya's cultivation was inferior to Yang Xiao's. Naturally, he couldn't gain the upper hand in this confrontation. Jiang Ziya looked at the divine whip in his hand, his face growing pale. What should he do next? Perhaps it was best to retreat for now. Just as Jiang Ziya was preparing to retreat, a beam of golden light shot in from the distance. In the blink of an eye, the light reached Jinjiling, revealing Kong X Yuan. Yang Xiao's eyes narrowed at the sight of Kong Xuan. Among the few in the world, below the level of a saint, who could make her wary, Kong Xuan was one of them. Though both were quasi-saints, Kong Xuan's five-colored divine light was said to be unstoppable. Below the level of a saint, and one could break through it. During Jiang Ziya's campaign against the Shang, if not for Zanti's intervention, they would never have passed Kong Xuan's barrier. This was going to be troublesome. Jiang Ziya, however, was overjoyed at Kong Xuan's arrival, finally seeing hope in dealing with Yang Xiao. Kong Xuan, quickly, capture Yang Xiao. Jiang Ziya urged. But to Jiang Ziya's surprise, Kong Xuan turned and coldly glanced at him, disdain evident in his eyes. I don't need you telling me what to do. Though Kong Xuan was here to assist the Chan sect, he had no good feelings toward Jiang Ziya. His words left Jiang Ziya's face contorted in anger, but he suppressed his frustration, knowing that they needed Kong Xuan's help. Kong Xuan looked at Yang Xiao, and Yang Xiao spoke in a deep voice. Kong Xuan, why have you joined the Western sect? As the son of He mighty Yuan Fan, will you really lower yourself to be the mount of the Western saints? Her words struck a nerve with Kong Xuan. What choice did he have? If not for Zanti breaking his five-colored divine light, he wouldn't have been captured. He had no desire to be a mount, but Zanti had placed a restriction within him when he was absorbed by the five-colored divine light. Otherwise, why would Kong Xuan serve the Western sect so obediently? Without further words, Kong Xuan's eyes flashed with golden light, and his right hand began to shimmer with the five-colored divine light, his signature divine ability. As the five-colored divine light rushed toward her, Yang Xiao remained calm, raising her jade-like hand to release a golden talisman. The golden talisman appeared and immediately blocked Kong Xuan's five-colored divine light. This was a piece of innate spiritual treasure called the Transforming God Talisman, which Gu Changsheng had long ago exchanged from the system's store. It was a consumable treasure capable of blocking most attacks below the level of a saint. When Yang Xiao left for battle, Gu Changsheng had given her a few of TH's talismans as a precaution against the Chan sect. After blocking the five-colored divine light, Yang Xiao wasted no time. Her figure blurred as she retreated back to her camp. After all, the number of transforming God talismans was limited, and she needed to conserve them. To defeat Kong Jishuang, she would have to seek out senior brother Gu. Seeing Yang Xiao retreat, Jiang Ziya shouted, Kong Xuan, what are you doing? Go capture Yang Xiao and Shen Gongbao along with her. If Kong Xuan could destroy Shen Gongbao's camp, the 3 empty spots on the investiture of the God's wall would surely be filled. But Kong Xuan turned back, glancing at Jiang Ziya with disdain. What I do is none of your concern. My task is to hold Jinjiling. With that, Kong Xuan returned to his camp. Jiang Ziya watched Kong Xuan's retreating figure, trembling with anger. What had the Western saints instructed Kong Xuan to do? No, he had to go find his master. After leaving some instructions with Immortal Huanglong, Jiang Ziya left Jinjiling and hurried back to Mount Kunlun to find Yuanxi. Meanwhile, Jiang Ziya also returned to Jinao Island to report the situation. Is Kong Xuan to Gu Changsheng? Upon hearing the report, a playful smile tugged at the corners of Gu Changsheng's mouth. Kong Xuan, is it? I almost forgot about him. Return to Jinjiling for now. As for Kong Xuan, I will handle him. Gu Changsheng had long devised a method to deal with Kong Xuan, though he hadn't expected to use it so soon.
Chapter 63, A Solution, and returning to Nua's palace seeing Gu Changsheng's confidence, Jiang Ziya couldn't help but feel puzzled. Senior brother, aren't you unable to take action? If Gu Changsheng could intervene, capturing Kong Xuan would be effortless. But Jiang Ziya knew that the Dao ancestor was keeping Gu Changsheng in check. At this, Gu Changsheng shook his head and chuckled softly. Kong Xuan is merely a small matter, there's no need for me to get involved. Although these words sounded arrogant, Gu Changsheng indeed had the strength to back them up. Yun Xiao thought for a moment, and a gleam of understanding flashed in her beautiful eyes. Then is master going to act? Her master was now a quasi-saint. If he took action, capturing Kong Xuan would certainly be no problem. But Gu Changsheng once again denied Jiang Ziya's guess. Master is in seclusion, attempting to break through to the Hunyuan Da Luo level. We shouldn't disturb him over such a trivial matter. In any case, you should return to Jiejiao. Within half a day, someone will surely deal with Kong Xuan. Rest assured. Since Gu Changsheng had said so, Yun Xiao naturally had no further questions. She nodded, turned, and left. As Jiang Ziya was about to depart from Jinao Island, she heard the sound of thunder from another part of the island. Curious, she moved towards the source of the noise, and found Big Xiao diligently practicing the Shag King, Divine Thunder. Seeing this, Jiang Ziya's eyes filled with a sense of pride and relief. Originally, she had intended to bring Big Xiao along for the restoration mission. But since Big Xiao was so focused on her cultivation, it was better to let her continue training in peace. Jiang Ziya then set off for Jiejiao. After she left, Big Xiao looked up at the sky, then at her own hands, and sighed. When will I be able to master the Shag King Divine Thunder like master? Oh well, better keep practicing. For senior brother Gus' thunder technique, I'll give it my all. If Jiang Ziya knew the reason for Big Xiao's dedication, she might feel a mix of emotions. Jiang Ziya returned to the Jade Void Palace. Seeing Jiang Ziya's return, Yuanshi Tianzhen's face lit up with anticipation, and he asked, "What is it? Has the investiture of the gods been completed?" Oz, why would Jiang Ziya return at this time? But Jiang Ziya shook his head. Seeing Jiang Ziya shake his head, Yuanshi's expression turned cold, and he asked in a harsh tone, "Since the investiture of the gods isn't finished, why have you come back?" "Master, I've come because of the situation with Kong Xuan," Jiang Ziya quickly replied. Hearing this, Yuanshi furrowed his brow. What? Didn't the Western Saints send Kong Xuan? Those Western Saints, I must go confront them. With that, Yuanshi was about to leave for Mount Sumu. Jiang Ziya quickly stopped him and said hurriedly, "Kong Xuan has arrived at Jiejiao." This made Yuanshi's expression grow even colder as he demanded angrily, "If Kong Xuan is at Jiejiao, why did you come back? Can you never explain things properly? Are you mocking me?" Yuanshi's words left Jiang Ziya feeling helpless. He had been trying to explain, but his master kept interrupting him. Of course, Jiang Ziya only dared to think this and didn't say it out loud. Jiang Ziya then explained how Kong Xuan had ignored his orders, allowed Jiang Ziya to leave, and refused to attack Shengongbao. After listening, Yuanshi's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he said, "Kong Xuan's actions are indeed inappropriate. But you are also at fault. Kong Xuan was never a member of the Chan sect, and since Jiang Ziya had once attacked Jiejiao, Kong Xuan naturally had no good impression of him. Moreover, what right did Jiang Ziya have to command a quasi-saint? If they weren't on the same side, Kong Xuan might have already attacked Jiang Ziya. After you return, Tell Kong Xuan that he must assist you in defeating the Jie sect disciples as quickly as possible, after which he may return to the Western sect. If any more time is wasted, I will personally confront the Western saints. After Yuanqi finished speaking, Jiang Ziya prepared to leave. However, Yuanqi called him back again, waving his right hand, and a brilliant 5-colored light appeared. I am Len, Ding Yu the celestial celebrating cloud. This time, our Chan sect disciples must not suffer any casualties. The Jie sect disciples must be eliminated, but the Chan sect disciples must also be kept safe. The Chan sect had very few disciples left. Jiang Ziya accepted the celestial celebrating cloud, thanked Yuanqi, and left Kunlun Mountain to return to Jiejiao. In Nuwa's palace, the goddess Nuwa, who had been reclining in the middle of the grand hall, suddenly stood up. A gleam flashed in her beautiful eyes, as she slightly parted her red lips and instructed the boy attendant beside her. "Joe, tell Gu Changsheng that I am not here." Nuwa's words left the boy somewhat puzzled, as Gu Changsheng arrived. But since Nuwa had given the order, the boy could only comply. However, before the boy could even take a step, a teasing voice echoed Thr. Our Nuwa's palace. "What's this, Nuwa Taoist friend? Are you so unwelcome to me? That's too heartless. Last time, I told you the truth about Dixin, didn't I?" As the voice spoke, Gu Changsheng appeared before Nuwa. Nuwa snorted coldly. "I've already thanked you for your help last time with the 9 heavens resting earth. What brings you here again?" "I am about to enter seclusion for cultivation. If it's nothing important, I won't see you off." Nuwa still remembered the last time vividly. Gu Changsheng hadn't answered her questions and had simply left. In Nuwa's attitude, Gu Changsheng felt a bit speechless. Why did Nuwa hold such grudges? Besides, it wasn't that he didn't want to tell her. How was he supposed to explain it? Should he tell her that he was actually a transmigrant, and therefore knew the truth about Dixin? Would Nuwa believe that? Gu Changsheng had no choice but to speak seriously. "Currently, my Jie sect disciples are helping Dixin restore his throne. However, they've encountered Kong Xuan at Jiejiao. I'd like to ask you, Nuwa Taoist friend, to take action and capture Kong Xuan." Regarding Kong Xuan, Gu Changsheng had long decided that Nuwa would be the best choice to deal with him. As soon as Gu Changsheng finished speaking, a flash of surprise crossed Nuwa's beautiful eyes. Wasn't Dixin's soul placed on the investiture of the gods? "Just a small trick," Gu Changsheng replied nonchalantly, though Nuwa was inwardly shocked. Taking someone from the investiture of the gods. It sounded simple, but how could it be so easy? Nuwa's expression quickly changed as she asked, "But what does this have to do with me?" Seeming to have anticipated Nuwa's response, Gu Changsheng raised his right hand, extending 2 fingers with a smile. "It's simple, 2 reasons. First, since you, Nuwa Taoist friend, now know the truth about Dixin's poem, shouldn't you help him restore his throne? If Nuwa hadn't sent the 3 demons from Zhuanyuan to Ambi to disrupt the Shang dynasty, Jiang Ziya's campaign wouldn't have succeeded so easily. Second, Kong Xuan now belongs to the Western sect. Don't you want to recruit him into your palace? By doing so, you would not only weaken the Western sect, but also strengthen the power of Nuwa's palace." After hearing this, Nuwa fell into deep thought. To be honest, Gu Changsheng made valid points. But if she acted so readily, wouldn't it seem like she was just following Gu Changsheng's lead? Thus, Nuwa replied coldly, "I can act, but you must agree to one condition." Chapter 64. The Power of the 5-Colored Divine Light, Conditions. Gu Changsheng was momentarily taken aback. He hadn't expected Nuwa to have any specific demands. Let's hear it. After all, the best solution for the situation at Jiejiao was for Nuwa to take action. It was worth hearing her conditions before deciding. If her conditions were truly unacceptable, he could consider other options. After all, he had his own methods for dealing with Kong Xuan, though he preferred not to reveal too much just yet. Nuwa then spoke calmly. "It's simple. I want to know how you learned about what happened at my temple." Nuwa had been pondering this ever since the last incident. It was a mystery that even the Western saints were puzzled by. How had Gu Changsheng, who had only recently returned, known about Maitreya's scheme involving Emperor Xin? Jie sect hadn't known, so how did he? Upon hearing Nuwa's condition, Gu Changsheng couldn't help but feel exasperated. This woman was really fixated on that question. After thinking for a moment, Gu Changsheng replied, I can tell you, but you must first help my Jie sect resolve the issue with Kong Xuan. As soon as Gu Changsheng finished speaking, Nua's figure flashed, leaving only her voice echoing in the palace. Wait here. I'll go take care of the situation at Jiejiao right away. By the time Gu Changsheng processed what had happened, Nua was already G1. He couldn't help but feel a bit speechless. Nua certainly acted quickly. It seemed she was eager to oppose the Western sect, only using the question as an excuse to ask him. But there was no way Gu Changsheng was going to stay in Nua's palace and wait for her return. He decided to leave as well. With a quick movement, Gu Changsheng departed from Nua's palace. At Jiejiao, after returning from the Jade Void Palace, Jiang Ziya immediately relayed Yuanqi's instructions to Kong Xuan. Kong Xuan listened with an indifferent expression, then looked at Jiang Ziya coldly and asked, "Are you ordering me?" As the son of Yuanfen, there was no way he would take orders from Jiang Ziya. Feeling intimidated by Kong Xuan's gaze, Jiang Ziya involuntarily took a half step back. "Kong Xuan, I'm not ordering you, just informing you. You don't want to stay here at Jiejiao forever, do you? Once you capture Shengongbao, you can leave." Jiang Ziya realized that to deal with Kong Xuan, he needed to use a soft approach, not a hard one. Finally, Kong Xuan began to walk away. But after taking a step, he turned back and saw, "You were right. I can't stay here forever. I'm afraid I might not be able to resist killing you." If it weren't for the Western Saint's orders, Kong Xuan would have already attacked Jiang Ziya upon arriving at Jiejiao. The incident at Jiejiao had left a lasting impression on him. There was no way Jiang Ziya could have passed through Jiejiao without some external help. Jiang Ziya, who had been somewhat relieved a moment ago, instantly felt his mood sour at Kong Xuan's words. He decided to wait until Kong Xuan had dealt with Shengongbao and his allies before addressing this issue. Jiang Ziya followed Kong Xuan out of the camp. Kong Xuan leaped into the sky, his gaze fixed on the distant Shang army camp. In the next moment, a figure shot out from the Shang camp. Shengongbao's face was grim as he looked at Kong Xuan. Jiang hadn't returned yet, but it seemed Kong Xuan was ready to strike again. No one in the camp could match Kong Xuan's power. Was this the end of his restoration campaign before it even began? Shengongbao could almost picture Jiang Ziya's smug face, and knew he needed to find a way to delay Kong Xuan. He had to buy time for Jiang to return. Summoning his courage, Shengongbao approached Kong Xuan and spoke in a deep voice. "Kong Xuan, you once guarded Jiejiao and were defeated by Jiang Ziya. Now you are here again, helping him guard Jiejiao. How ironic that the son of Yuanfeng has fallen to such a lowly position." Shengongbao's words hit the mark. Kong Xuan had indeed guarded Jiejiao before, but against different enemies. While the possibility was slim, perhaps he could provoke Kong Xuan into attacking Jiang Ziya. After all, Shengongbao had noticed how Kong Xuan had treated Jiang Ziya earlier. However, Shengongbao's words had no effect. Kong Xuan's brow furrowed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "You are talking too much." Once he captured Shengongbao, he would return to Mount Sumo. Kong Xuan's aura surged as golden light flared in his right hand. Seeing Kong Xuan ready to strike, Shengongbao knew he had no choice but to fight back. Just as Shengongbao prepared to defend himself, a graceful figure appeared in the distance. Jiang had arrived at the critical moment. "Do you have a way to deal with Kong Xuan?" Shengongbao asked hurriedly. Jiang nodded. Her task now was to delay Kong Xuan until Gu Changsheng's reinforcement arrived to handle him. In the camp at Jiejiao, Jiang Ziya was startled to see Jiang's return. Had she found a way to counter Kong Xuan? But then he reconsidered. What means could surpass Kong Xuan's 5-colored divine light below the level of a saint? Jiang's return was perfect timing. She could be sent straight to the investiture of the gods. However, Kong Xuan, growing impatient, launched an attack on Jiang. This time, Kong Xuan didn't immediately use his 5-colored divine light, as Jiang's earlier countermeasures had left a deep impression on him. He wanted to test her first. Kong Xuan soared through the air toward Jiang. Jiang swiftly ascended into the sky, raising her hand to unleash the primordial golden dipper toward Kong Xuan. Seeing the primordial golden dipper coming his way, Kong Xuan's expression changed. He had intended to probe Jiang, but she had gone straight for her most powerful treasure. Kong Xuan knew of the primordial golden dipper's formidable reputation and understood that it wasn't easy to deal with. Left with no choice, Kong Xuan activated his 5-colored divine light. The light flared, and the primordial golden dipper was instantly absorbed. Seeing this, Jiang Ziya's expression turned serious. Kong Xuan's 5-colored divine light could even absorb Tresu. She had underestimated him. After securing the primordial golden dipper, Kong Xuan noticed Jiang Ziya's reaction and surmised that she likely no longer had any of those talismans. He activated the 5-colored divine light again, this time targeting Jiang Ziya directly. Jiang Ziya felt a deep sense of unease. Gu Changsheng had only given her 3 transforming god talismans, and now she might have to use a second one at Jiejiao. It seemed like an awful waste, but without it, she had no way to counter the 5-colored divine light. As Jiang Ziya hesitated, a sword hum echoed from the distance. She turned to see several beams of light shooting towards Kong Xuan. Chapter 65, Niwa takes action. Breaking Jiejiao. The sudden attack left Kong Xuan momentarily panicked. He felt a deadly threat from the blades that had just appeared. Forced to abandon his assault on Jiang Ziya, Kong Xuan turned his attention to dealing with the blades. With a flash of his the colored divine light, he quickly absorbed the divine weapons. However, his expression remained extremely serious. Although he had neutralized this wave of attacks, the person who had launched them filled him with an indescribable sense of dread. The pressure he felt was even more terrifying than when he had faced Junti. Could it be a saint? But which saint had intervened? At the same time, both Shen Gongbao and Jiang Ziya turned their gaze towards the source of the attack. Jiang Ziya felt a surge of joy. Had senior brother Gu's reinforcement arrived so quickly? His teaming was impeccable. In reality, when Gu Changsheng had mentioned half a day, he had accounted for the possibility that Niwa might take some time to prepare. He hadn't expected her to move immediately after he finished speaking. Meanwhile, Jiang Ziya, at Jiejiao, wore a grim expression. Who would dare to assist the Jie sect at this time? He was curious to see who would be so bold. But before he could voice his question, an overwhelming, indescribable pressure swept in from afar, causing the words to catch in his throat. This was the presence of a saint. Jiang Ziya so Aldi recognized it immediately. But who among the saints would now aid the Jie sect? Could it be Gu Changsheng? But wasn't he unable to act? As everyone pondered these questions, a figure appeared in the sky. Niwa had arrived. Seeing Niwa, Jiang Ziya, Kong Xuan, and the others were all astonished. Jiang Ziya was especially shocked. The reinforcement Gu Changsheng had mentioned was none other than Niwa. During the investiture of the gods, Niwa had remained neutral, neither helping Yuanxi nor the Jie sect. Yet now, Gu Changsheng had somehow persuaded her to side with the Jie sect. In the next moment, the 5-colored divine light in Kong Xuan's hand dissipated as he spoke directly. Since Saint Niwa has decided to aid the Jie sect, I shall take my leave. Kong Xuan had no desire to help Jiang Ziya in the first place. He was only doing so because of the Western Ant's orders. Now that Niwa had appeared, he had a legitimate reason to withdraw. Jiang Ziya, hearing Kong Xuan's words, was filled with anxiety. But even if Kong Xuan stayed, what could he do? He was no match for Niwa. Jiang Ziya flew up to the sky and looked at Niwa. May I ask why? Lady Niwa has chosen to assist the Jie sect. Niwa merely glared at Jiang Ziya. With a single look, an immense saintly pressure descended upon him, smashing him back down to the ground. How dare you speak to me? She snapped. One sentence was all it took to make Jiang Ziya's face flush with embarrassment as he coughed up blood. After all, he was Yuanxi's disciple. One should at least show some respect to his master. But despite his anger, Jiang Ziya dared not say more. What if Niwa, in her anger, decided to kill him? Meanwhile, Kong Xuan was already preparing to leave. But, before he could, Niwa spoke. Kong Xuan, I didn't come here for the Jie sect. I came for you. Are you content to remain as Juntis Mount in the Western sect? Helping the Jie sect was secondary. Niwa's primary goal was to oppose the Western sect. Otherwise, she wouldn't have acted quickly after Gu Changsheng's request. Kong Xuan was initially stunned, then quickly realized this was his chance. He immediately bowed deeply to Niwa. Please, save me, Saint Niwa. Of course, Kong Xuan didn't want to serve as Juntis Mount any longer, but he was bound by Junti's restrictions. He couldn't break free on his own, but as a saint, Niwa certainly could. Seeing through Kong Xuan's predicament, Niwa said, I can help you break free from the control of the Western saints, but you must join my sect. Are you willing? As soon as Niwa finished speaking, Kong Xuan nodded without hesitation. I am willing. Was there even a choice between serving as a mount in the Western sect and joining Niwa's sect? The next moment, Niwa raised her jade-like hand, and a light fell upon Kong Xuan, instantly breaking Zhanti's restrictions. Thanked you, Lady Niwa. Kong Xuan immediately expressed his gratitude. Niwa smiled faintly. In that case, you shall follow me back to Niwa's palace. She had no interest in staying at Jiejiao any longer. She needed to return quickly to question Gu Changsheng about the incident with Dixin. With that, Kong Xuan followed Niwa as they left Jiejiao. Jiang Ziya was left dumbfounded, staring blankly in the direction they had gone, his eyes filled with confusion. What just happened? Everything had been meticulously planned by his master, Yuanshi, to counter Gu Changsheng. Gu Changsheng wasn't supposed to take action, and the Jie sect had no saints. With the five-colored divine light, Kong Xuan was supposed to be unstoppable. But who could have predicted that Niwa would appear at this moment and side with the Jie sect? Jiang Ziya really wanted to confront Niwa, but his life was more important. Kong Xuan was supposed to eliminate the Jie sect disciples and complete the investiture of the gods. But now, Kong Xuan had left with Niwa. The Chan sect's advantage had vanished, and the situation had completely reversed. Without Kong Xuan and Jiang Ziya had no one left to counter Jiang. What should he do now? At that moment, Jiang finally snapped out of her shock. Although Kong Xuan had taken her primordial golden dipper, she wasn't too worried. Retrieving it later wouldn't be too difficult. Now that Kong Xuan was gone, this was the perfect opportunity to kill Jiang Ziya. Jiang's gaze fixed on Jiang Ziya, her power surging as she shouted coldly, Jiang Ziya, your time has come. With that, she struck at Jiang Ziya with her hand, and a terrifying pressure enveloped the area around him. Jiang Ziya's expression changed drastically. He immediately summoned the celestial celebrating cloud to defend himself. Without it, that strike would have killed him. Jiang's eyes flashed with surprise. She hadn't expected Yuanshi to give Jiang Ziya the celestial celebrating cloud, making it much harder to kill him. But difficult or not, she had to try. Jiang formed seals with her hands, preparing to unleash her spells. Seeing Jiang about to use her divine powers, Jiang Ziya made up his mind. With Kong Xuan gone, there was no point in holding Jiejiao any longer. As he activated the celestial celebrating cloud, Jiang Ziya turned and shouted, Immortal Huanglong, quickly. He intended to call Immortal Huanglong to retreat with him. But when he turned around, he was stunned by what he saw. Chapter 66. What did you do to Niwa? Originally, Jiang Ziya, seeing the situation take a turn for the worse, intended to call for Immortal Huanglong and make a quick retreat. After all, Jiejiao was just a position. If it was lost, so be it. But if his life was lost, it would be for good. However, when he turned to look, Immortal Huanglong was already disappearing into the distance, taking Neva and the others with him. Jiang Ziya opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was utterly speechless. Back during the campaign against the Shan, as the Grand Marshal of Ziki, it was always him who commanded others to cover the retreat. But now, it seemed he was the one left behind while Immortal Huanglong fled. And to make matters worse, not only did Immortal Huanglong flee, but he also took Neva and the others with him. While Jiang Ziya was still in shock, Jiang's attack had already landed on the celestial celebrating cloud. But without the primordial golden dipper, Jiang's attacks were unable to break through the cloud's defenses. Thus, protected by the celestial celebrating cloud, Jiang Ziya remained unharmed. As Jiang's attack dissipated, Immortal Huanglong, Neva, and the others had completely vanished from Jiang Ziya's sight. Seeing this, Jiang Ziya clenched his teeth. With the key Chan sect figures already gone, there was no point in holding on to Jiejiao any longer. Turning to Shun Gongbao, Jiang Ziya coldly shouted, Shun Gongbao, don't get too pleased with yourself. This is just a minor setback. The Shang dynasty and the Jie sect are both doomed. Your victory won't last long. With that, Jiang Ziya began to retreat, intending to flee. But Jiang had no intention of letting Jiang Ziya escape. Her hand glowed with power as she unleashed a spell aimed at him. The spell wasn't meant to harm him, but to stop him from escaping. However, Jiang Ziya wasn't without his own means of escape. He produced an ancient spirit jade, which shattered in his hand, causing him to vanish from the spot. Seeing this, Jiang Ziya frowned. Although they had secured Jiejiao, Jiang Ziya and the others had escaped unscathed. It was hard to say whether the GS sect had truly won this battle. At this moment, Shen Gongbao approached and said calmly, "No need to worry. Jiang Ziya FL, Aing from Jiejiao marks the beginning of the Chan sect's downfall." Hearing this, Jiang Ziya nodded in agreement. Next time, she would be fully prepared and would ensure that Jiang Ziya was captured. Shen Gongbao then ordered his troops to attack Jiejiao. With Jiang Ziya and his ally Es gone, the fortress was easily taken. The first hurdle in restoring the Shang dynasty had been overcome. Meanwhile, Kong Xuan followed Niwa back to her palace. Even as a quasi-saint, Kong Xuan found himself struggling to process everything that had just happened. Had he really broken free from the control of the Western saints and joined Niwa's sect? However, one thing puzzled him deeply. Why had Niwa suddenly appeared at Jiejiao? As Kong Xuan pondered this, they arrived at Niwa's palace. But upon arrival, Kong Xuan noticed something off about Niwa. Her expression shifted as she scanned the palace, and the temperature seemed to drop suddenly. Kong Xuan looked at Niwa in confusion, but didn't dare to ask anything. Niwa waved her hand, pulling a nearby boy attendant towards her, and asked coldly, "Where is Gu Changsheng?" The boy turned pale with fear and stammered, He left." "When did he leave?" Niwa demanded. "He left right after you did, Lady Niwa," the boy replied, trembling. Hearing this, Niwa's expression turned icy. No wonder Gu Changsheng had agreed so readily. He hadn't waited in the palace as he had promised. Did he think leaving would get him off the hook? Niwa's figure flickered as she sped off towards Jiejiao Island. It was only after Niwa had left that Kong Xuan finally processed what had happened. Gu Changsheng, wasn't he the recently returned Hunyuan Da Luo? It was said that he as Tongtian's first disciple. But what was the connection between Niwa and Gu Changsheng? Judging by Niwa's reaction, what exactly had Gu Changsheng done to her? Kong Xuan wanted to follow and see for himself, but the memory of Niwa's demeanor made him hesitate. Better to wait for Niwa's return at the palace. On Jiejiao Island, Bixiao was still diligently practicing the Shagking Divine Thunder on the other side of the island. However, as she continued to practice, she realized that she had reached a bottleneck. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't reach her master's level. When would she be able to learn Senior Brother Gus' lightning technique? No, she had to ask her master, or Senior Brother Gu for advice. Just as Bixiao was about to leave, she sensed something and looked up. In the distance, a figure appeared above Jiejiao Island, accompanied by an overwhelming saintly presence that enveloped the entire island. For a moment, all the GS sect disciples on the island were on high alert. But when they recognized who it was, their confusion grew. Why had Niwa come to Jiejiao Island? The GS sect and Niwa had no conflicts, HT. The next moment, under everyone's watchful eyes, Niwa shouted coldly, "Gu Changsheng, get out here." Her voice echoed across Jiejiao Island, leaving the disciples bewildered. Was Niwa here to see Senior Brother Gu? Bixiao's eyes widened in surprise and confusion. What had happened? What had Senior Brother Gu done to make Niwa chase him all the way to Jiejiao Island? The next moment, a figure emerged from Bayou Palace. Tongtian approached Niwa with a smile. "Niwa Taoist friend, long time no see." But Niwa was in no mood for pleasantries. She demanded coldly, "Enough with the small talk. Where is Gu Changsheng? Tell him to come out and see me." Gu Changsheng had dared to trick her, and she wasn't about to let it slide. Seeing Niwa's demeanor, Tongtian was puzzled but still smiled. "Changsheng left a while ago and hasn't returned. May I ask what he did to offend you?" At Tongtian's inquiry, Niwa almost blurted out, "That rascal came to my palace, and—" But halfway through, she realized that saying this would make her seem foolish. Niwa spread her divine sense across Jiejiao Island, confirming that Gu Changsheng was indeed not there. She then said, "Tongtian, when Gu Changsheng returns, tell him this matter isn't over. He'd better come to Niwa's palace to face me." With that, Niwa turned and left. Once Niwa was gone, Tongtian returned to Bayou Palace. It was only then that Gu Changsheng emerged from inside. Tongtian looked at Gu Changsheng with a puzzled expression, and asked, Changsheng, what exactly did you do to Nuwa? Chapter 67, The Secrets of Heaven Must Not Be Revealed. Gu Changsheng was left speechless for a moment, and reluctantly recounted to Tongtian the events where he had asked Nuwa to capture Kong Xuan. Yet, even after hearing this, Tongtian's face was still filled with confusion. Shunsh, NG, I too am curious. How did you come to know the truth about the incident at Nuwa's temple? If I had known about this back then, I might have been able to sway Nuwa to our side, and who knows how the outcome of the investiture of the gods would have changed. Gu Changsheng felt even more helpless now. Why are both Master and Nuwa so curious? He could only shake his head and reply, Master, the secrets of heaven must not be revealed. Hearing this, a look of disdain flashed in Tongtian's eyes. If you don't want to say it, then don't. What's with this, secrets of heaven, nonsense? Do you, Gu Changsheng, really believe in such things? Seeing that Gu Changsheng was unwilling to say more, Tongtian didn't press further, but instead returned to the matter of Nuwa. So, what do you plan to do about Nuwa? It seems she won't let this matter go easily, unless you give her a proper explanation. Gu Changsheng felt a headache coming on at this. He had thought that sneaking back to Jiejiao Island would be enough, but who could have guessed that Nuwa would follow him there? Was it really necessary? With a sigh, Gu Changsheng said, Let's see how it goes. Maybe after some time, Nuwa will forget about it. After all, it wasn't that big of a deal, was it? Though he said this, Tongtian didn't believe it would be that simple. Waving his hand dismissively, Tongtian said with a look of annoyance, Fine, fine. If Nuwa comes, looking for you again, you deal with it yourself. If there's nothing else, don't disturb my seclusion. I can help you block her once, maybe even twice, but not a third time. Seeing this, Gu Changsheng had no choice but to leave Bayou Palace. After Gu Changsheng left, Tongtian's expression turned serious. Although the battle at Golden Rooster Ridge was a victory for the Jie sect, Tongtian knew that dealing with the 4 saints and the 3 sects was no easy task. The affairs of the Jie sect couldn't be left to Gu Changsheng alone to handle. From now on, I must enter deep seclusion, and will not emerge until I achieve the realm of primordial chaos. Meanwhile, just as Gu Changsheng returned to his cave, before he could even sit down, a clear voice rang out from outside. Senior Brother Gu, are you there? Before Gu Changsheng could respond, Bixiao had already dashed inside. Senior Brother Gu, you are here. As soon as Bixiao finished speaking, Gu Changsheng's face darkened. If I said I wasn't here, would you leave? Come on, Senior Brother Gu, I've been practicing the upper clear divine thunder technique really well. When will you teach me that mystical art of yours? Bixiao asked with a beaming smile. Seeing this, Gu Changsheng could only reply, What do you mean by really well? If I remember correctly, I told you that you need to reach the level of master before I'll teach you. Bixiao was momentarily stunned, then quickly replied, Senior brother, your requirement is too high. Although master is no longer a saint, his foundation is something we disciples can never hope to match. No matter how many millennia I practice the upper clear divine thunder, it will never compare to master's. But now that eldest sister has gone to assist Shen Gombao in clearing his name, I want to contribute too. Please teach me. As she spoke, Bixiao put on a pitiful expression, looking at Gu Changsheng with wide eyes. Faced with Bixiao's pleading gaze, Gu Changsheng was at a loss. If he didn't teach her, wouldn't she just come looking for him every day? After a moment of thought, Gu Changsheng said, All right, how about this? Go help Jiang Ziya first, and once the clearing of Shen Gongbao's name is complete, I'll teach you the Honmeng Zhuanle. In truth, this was just a way to pacify Bixiao. The Honmeng Zhuanle was such a profound mystical art. How could it be learned so easily? As soon as Gu Changsheng said this, Bixiao's face lit up with joy. Senior brother, you said it. I'll go find eldest sister right now. With that, Bixiao turned and headed out. But just as she reached the entrance, she stopped, quickly turned back, and leaned in close to Gu Changsheng, her face full of curiosity. Senior brother Gu, just say what you want to say. Gu Changsheng's face was covered in black lines. Then I'll ask. Senior brother, what exactly did you do to the Saint Nuwa? As soon as Bixiao finished her question, Gu Changsheng's face turned completely cold. Gritting his teeth, he spat out a single word. Scrum. All right, See you later, senior brother. Seeing the citiati turn sour, Bixiao instantly disappeared from Gu Changsheng's sight. After Bixiao left, Gu Changsheng's expression gradually returned to normal. He suddenly began to wonder if it was really wise to have gone to Niwa to deal with Kong Xuan. Forget it, it's already done. I'll deal with it later. If it comes to it, I'll just tell Niwa the truth. Whether she believes it or not, that's up to her. With that, Gu Changsheng waved his right hand, and as spiritual light surged, a map appeared before him. This was the route for Shen Gongbao's mission to clear his name. Having passed Golden Rooster Ridge, the next stop should be Sishui Pass. I wonder who the Chan sect will send to guard Sishui Pass. At this thought, a flash of killing intent appeared in Gu Changsheng's eyes. No matter who the Chan sect sends to guard Sishui Pass, it's time to add new names to the investiture of the gods. Meanwhile, in the Jade Void Palace, Master, senior brother Huanglong went too far. He left me behind, and fled on his own. As soon as Jiang Ziya returned to the Jade Void Palace, he began to complain to Yuanqi about Huanglong Zhenren. Huanglong Zhenren, on the other hand, was indifferent. You have the celestial celebration cloud bestowed by Master. What's there to be afraid of? Hearing this, Jiang Ziya became even more upset, glaring at Huanglong Zhenren as he retorted angrily, "Then how about I give you a celestial celebration cloud, and I'll run first." Jiang Ziya, that's enough. Enough. Before Huanglong Zhenren could finish speaking, Yuanqi couldn't bear it any longer. Did they think the Jade Void Palace was some kind of marketplace? Seeing Yuanqi angry, Jiang Ziya and Huanglong Zhenren both fell silent. Only then did Yuanqi ask, what exactly happened with Kong Xuan? It had taken great effort to borrow someone from the Western Two Saints, yet instead of helping the Chan sect, Kong Xuan ended up following Niwa. And what about Niwa? How did she suddenly become involved in the Golden Rooster Ridge affair? Was it just a whim, or had Niwa fully aligned herself with the Jie sect? Master, I really don't know what's going on with Saint Niwa either. But we must quickly figure out her intentions, Jiang Ziya said anxiously. If Niwa truly sided with the Jie sect, it would be a disaster. Just as Yuanqi was about to respond, a cold shout echoed from outside the Jade Void Palace. Yuanqi, what have you done with Kong Xuan? Chapter 68. Show me some respect. As the voice resounded, a figure had already arrived within the Jade Void Palace. It was none other than Zhanti Taoist. Zhanti glared angrily at Yuanqi. The Western sect had always been weak in foundation, with few disciples. Although they had managed to recruit quite a few Jie sect disciples, during the 10,000 Immortals formation, most of them had either been taken away by Gu Changsheng, or were too weak to be of any significance. Currently, aside from the two saints of the Western sect, only Random and Kong Xuan held any real power. Back then, he had allowed Kong Xuan to help out only because Yuanqi claimed it was on the teacher's orders. But now, the restriction he had placed on Kong Xuan had somehow been lifted. One must understand that Kong Xuan, as the son of the Phoenix, would never have joined the Western sect as a mere mount just because of a statement like, "You have a connection with the Western sect." It was only because Zhanti had placed a restriction on Kong Xuan after subduing him with his 5-colored divine light. But now, the restriction was gone. How could Zhanti not be anxious? Without a second thought, he rushed to the Jade Void Palace to confront Yuanqi. Seeing Zhanti speak to him in such a manner, Yuanqi, who was already somewhat agitated, felt a surge of anger and pointed at Zhanti furiously. First of all, Zhanti, get this straight. This is the Jade Void Palace, not Mount Sumu. And secondly, what do you mean by asking what I did to Kong Xuan? I should be the one asking you, what is going on with your disciple, Kong Xuan? We agreed that he would help guard Golden Rooster Ridge, and send Jie sect disciples to the list. But then Niwa says a few words, and Kong Xuan just up, and leaves with her. This time, Huanglong and the others managed to escape, but if anything had happened to them, I would not have let it go easily. Yuanqi's barrage of questions left Zhanti momentarily stunned. Standing there, Zhanti's anger subsided somewhat, replaced by a look of confusion. He muttered to himself, Kong Xuan left with Niwa. Jiang Ziya immediately chimed in. Yes, as soon as Niwa appeared, she said just a couple of sentences, and Kong Xuan defected. If it weren't for Master's foresight in giving me the celestial celebration cloud, I'd already be dead by Yunxila's hand. With Jiang Ziya's explanation, Zhanti finally understood what had happened. Kong Xuan actually left with Nuwa. That Nuwa. Wait a minute, this isn't right. Zhanti suddenly realized something and glared at Yuanxi, angrily retorting, Kong Xuan left with Nuwa. What does that have to do with me? It's not like I told him to go with her. My Western sect is a victim in this as well, so why are you asking me for an explanation? Clearly, none of the Chan sect disciples were harmed, yet his Western sect had lost Kong Xuan. So why did it seem like Yuanxi was the one who had suffered some great injustice? Yuanxi coldly responded, so, how do you plan to resolve this matter? Are you going to confront Nuwa? I can accompany you. In truth, Yuanxi wasn't really helping Zhanti. He primarily wanted to figure out where Nuwa's loyalties lay. Hearing this, Zhanti immediately nodded. He had originally intended to find Nuwa and get some answers. Kong Xuan was no ordinary being. He couldn't just let Nuwa take him away so easily. Now that Yuanxi was willing to accompany him, Zhanti felt a bit more confident. Without delay, Yuanxi and Zhanti left the Jade Void Palace together, heading towards Nuwa's War Palace. At War Palace, Kong Xuan stood in a corner of the Grand Hall. However, at this moment, Kong Xuan's expression was one of vice anxiety. Escaping the control of the Western sect should have been a cause for celebration. But the Nuwa before him. Ever since she returned, Nuwa's face had been cold, and Kong Xuan hadn't dared to utter a single word. Truth be told, Kong Xuan wasn't particularly interested in whatever had happened between Gu Changsheng and Nuwa. The problem was, what should he do now? He couldn't just keep standing there forever. As Kong Xuan pondered his predicament, Nuwa suddenly stood up, her beautiful eyes fixed on the entrance to War Palace. Kong Xuan froze. What's happening now? The next moment, his expression turned cold as well. It was Zhanti. He hadn't expected Zhanti to follow him all the way to War Palace. Just as Kong Xuan was about to say something, he noticed that Nuwa had already walked to the palace gates. The next moment, Zhanti and Yuanxi arrived in quick succession. Zhanti immediately spotted Nuwa, and Kong Xuan standing not far behind her and demanded, Nuwa, why did you take a disciple of my Western sect? Yuanxi also asked, fellow Taoist Nuwa, why did you assist the Jie sect? But after they finished speaking, Nuwa's only response was a single word. Leave. The faces of both Yuanxi and Zhanti darkened at this. Zhanti had anticipated that Nuwa might not be very welcoming, especially since the incident with Maitreya had strained relations between the Western sect and Nuwa. To be dismissed with just one word, leave, without even a proper explanation. Where was the dignity of a saint? Moreover, he wasn't alone this time, Yuanxi was with him. Feeling emboldened, Zhanti spoke up with a cold voice, Nuwa, don't go too far. The matter with Emperor Xin has already ended with Maitreya's death. What more do you want? But Kong Xuan is my mount. Why did you take him in? After Zhanti finished speaking, there wasn't the slightest hint of emotion on Nuwa's face. She merely raised a jade-like hand and gestured towards Kong Xuan. Kong Xuan was momentarily stunned. What does this mean? Does Nuwa want me to return to the Western sect? But then, Nuwa coldly commanded, bring me my treasure. Kong Xuan was briefly confused, but then realized what Nuwa meant. He immediately took out the 7 heavenly Mang divine knives he had previously taken. Upon seeing Nuwa retrieve the 7 heavenly Mang divine knives, a sense of foreboding washed over Zhanti, and he quickly flew back in retreat. But there was no way Nuwa would let Zhanti leave so easily. Already infuriated by the incident with Gu Changsheng, she had been looking for an outlet for her anger, and Zhanti had shown up at just the right time. Nuwa activated the 7 heavenly Mang divine knives, sending them straight towards Zhanti. Zhanti was shocked beyond belief. Who could have expected Nuwa to attack without any warning? With no other choice, Zhanti had to muster his power to defend himself. But Zhanti's strength was already inferior to Nuwa's, and with her attacks growing more ferocious, he was soon forced into a defensive position. Before long, several wounds had already appeared on his body. Unable to bear it any longer, Zhanti shouted angrily at Yuanxi, Yuanxi, how much longer are you just going to stand there and watch? He had brought Yuanxi along precisely to avoid such a situation. Hearing Zhanti's shout, Yuanxi knew he could no longer stand by. In a flash, Yuanxi moved to block Nuwa's path, smiling as he said, fellow Taoist Nuwa, could you please show me some respect? But as soon as the words left his mouth, Niwa let out a cold snort. With a wave of her jade hand, the 7 heavenly mind divine knives immediately changed direction, heading straight for Yuanqi. Chapter 69. I intend to oppose the Western sect. Seeing the 7 heavenly mind divine knives flying toward him, Yuanqi's face turned pale. He had expected that Niwa would give him some face and stop her attack. Instead, things had escalated to the point where he was now involved as well. What exactly was going on with Niwa? Had she truly aligned herself completely with the Jie sect? But why would she do that? Although the Jie sect had Gu Changsheng, he had returned too late. The Jie sect's influence had already waned significantly, and they were hardly a threat anymore. So why would Niwa support them? However, the 7 heavenly mind divine knives were already at his throat, leaving Yuanqi no time to ponder these questions. Instinctively, Yuanqi raised his right hand to summon the celestial celebration cloud to defend himself. But as he raised his hand, he realized with a start that something was wrong. The celestial celebration cloud had been lent to Jiang Ziya. At this moment, the 7 heavenly mind divine knives were almost upon him. In a desperate move, Yuanqi could only gather his power to form a barrier in front of him. But how could a hastily conjured barrier withstand the full force of the 7 heavenly mind divine knives? The moment they clashed, the barrier shattered. Fortunately, this brief moment of resistance gave Yuanqi just enough time to dodge. The 7 heavenly mind divine knives grazed his neck as they flew past. Blood spurted out instantly. Yuanqi touched his neck with lingering fear. It was a close call. If he hadn't moved just in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. This injury, however, fueled Yuanqi's genuine fury. It seemed that without taking things seriously, there was no way to have a proper conversation with Niwa. With a cold glare, Yuanqi unleashed a terrifying surge of power from behind him. The Pangu banner appeared. Niwa, I came here today with only one question. But if you want to fight to the end, then know that I, Yuanqi, do not fear you. As he spoke, the power emanating from the Pangu banner intensified several times over. This immense power finally caused Niwa to regain some composure from her rage. With a wave of her jade hand, she recalled the 7 heavenly mind divine knives and coldly said, Ask what you must, and then leave. This War Palace does not welcome you. Her main grievance was with the Western sect, not Yuanqi. The situation hadn't escalated that far. Seeing Niwa relent slightly, Junti quickly spoke up, Niwa, why did you take a disciple of the Western sect? Upon hearing this, Niwa let out a cold, mocking laugh. Her laughter only served to infuriate Junti further. What's so funny? Niwa pointed to Kong Xuan, who was standing nearby. You don't mean to say that the disciple of the Western sect you are referring to is Kong Xuan, do you? Who else? Kong Xuan has already joined the Western sect, Zanti retorted. However, Niwa's face remained icy as she responded, whether or not Kong Xuan counts as a disciple of the Western sect is irrelevant. And don't accuse me of stealing a disciple from your sect. Kong Xuan, you tell them yourself, do you want to stay in the War Palace, or return to the Western sect? Niwa directly threw the question to Kong Xuan. In an instant, all eyes were on Kong Xuan. As their gazes met, memories of his days as Junti's Mount flooded back, filling Kong Xuan with a deep sense of humiliation. He had gone through great lengths to break free from the Western sect, and now they wanted him to go back. Kong Xuan immediately declared, Junti, do you really not know why I ended up in the Western sect in the first place? From today onward, I will stay and cultivate in the War Palace. As soon as Kong Xuan finished speaking, Niwa raised the 7 heavenly mind divine knives once more, her voice icy. Did you hear that? This isn't a case of me stealing your disciple. Kong Xuan willingly joined me. I'm in a foul mood today, so if you don't leave now, don't blame me for what happens next. Niwa's words left no room for negotiation. With no other options, Junti looked toward Yuanqi, hoping he would say something. However, the question Yuanqi asked had nothing to do with Kong Xuan. Fellow Taoist Niwa, during the investiture of the gods, you have always refrained from involving yourself in the conflicts between the Chan sect and Jie sect. Why have you chosen to intervene on behalf of the Jie sect this time? Whether Kong Xuan returned to the Western sect or not was of no concern to Yuanqi. His purpose in coming was to determine Niwa's true stance. When Yuanqi asked this question, Niwa's mind immediately conjured the image of Gu Changsheng. Why did she help the Jie sect? When did I ever help the Jie sect? Niwa retorted, catching Yuanqi off guard. If you weren't helping the Jie sect, then why did you aid them in securing Golden Rooster Ridge? Yuanqi was even more confused now. Which side was Niue on? At this moment, Niue glared at Shanti and sternly declared, "Whatever conflicts arise between the Chan sect and the Jie sect have nothing to do with me. My actions today were solely to oppose the Western sect." While Gu Changsheng might have played a part, Niue's main goal was to go against the Western sect. As soon as she said this, Shanti's face turned an even darker shade. Niue was blatant, disregarding the Western sect's dignity. Meanwhile, Yuanqi inwardly sighed with relief. As long as Niue wasn't siding with the Jie sect, that was good enough for him. This time, it was the Western sect that had been targeted. As long as they kept the Western sect from interfering, next time, everything should be fine. After some thought, Yuanqi calmly remarked, "If that's the case, then I kindly ask that you refrain from intervening in the matters between my Chan sect and the Jie sect in the future. You should be well aware that filling the investiture of the God's list with Jie sect disciples is a mandate of the heavenly Tao." Although Niue wasn't siding with the Jie sect, he still felt the need to issue a warning. If Niue were to meddle again in the future, he could always bring up the heavenly Tao to pressure her. However, as soon as Lanshi finished speaking, Niue's expression grew even colder. "What I choose to do is my business. You, the sage of jade purity, have no authority to dictate my actions. If you have no other business here, then leave immediately. I won't see you off." With these words, Niue effectively issued an eviction order. Seeing this, Yuanqi had no choice but to turn and leave. But Shanti wasn't having it. He had come here with Yuanqi to confront Niue, and now they were just leaving. Yuanqi, however, paid no attention to Shanti and left the War Palace without looking back. Left with no other choice, Shanti followed suit and left as well. After they had gone, Niue returned to the center of the Grand Hall and glanced at Kong Xuan. "Find a place to cultivate on your own. If you have any questions, you may come to me." Kong Xuan nodded, not daring to say much more at this time. As soon as Yuanqi and Shanti left the War Palace, Shanti angrily confronted Yuanqi. "Yuanqi, what do you mean by this? Are we just going to let this go?" But Yuanqi replied, "What else can we do? You saw it yourself. Kong Xuan chose to stay in the War Palace. Do you expect me to fight Niue alongside you? In the end, wasn't it the Western sect's fault for using underhanded methods to recruit Kong Xuan in the first place? Besides, the priority now is to send the Jie sect disciples to fill the list. Do you have any plans? The Western sect couldn't take action, and the Chan sect didn't have many members left either. So what now?" With a dark expression, Shanti grudgingly said, "Are you implying that there are no other options besides your Chan sect and my Western sect?" This remark gave Lanshi an idea. There was still Laozi.
Chapter 70, Master, I am willing to go. Mount Shuyan, Baoji Palace. Laozi stood solemnly at the center of Baoji Palace. Not far from him, a figure lay suspended in mid-air. It was Xuandu. At this moment, Xuandu's eyes were closed, and his body was bathed in a mysterious golden light. However, where his severed arm should have been, a striking purple-black glow emanated. No matter how powerful the golden light was, it could not dispel the purple-black energy. Laozi made a series of hand seals, guiding the golden light around Xuandu's body, but the results were less than satisfactory. After about half an hour, Laozi waved his right hand, causing the golden light around Xuandu to dissipate. He frowned slightly. "Your injuries are mostly healed, and your cultivation has been restored," Laozi said. Hearing this, Xuandu immediately adjusted his posture and respectfully bowed to Laozi. "Thank you, Master." But Laozi's gaze fell upon Xuandu's severed arm, where a cold glint flickered in his eyes. "Though your injuries are healed, and your cultivation restored, your arm cannot be regenerated in a short time. Normally, for someone with high cultivation, regenerating a limb would not be difficult, especially for someone like Xuandu, who had reached the level of quasi-saint. However, this wound was inflicted by the heaven-slaying sword. Over the past few days, Laozi had tried everything, but even he could not eliminate the destructive power contained within the sword, preventing Xuandu's arm from regenerating. Though Xuandu's cultivation had been restored, this was only due to Laozi's medicinal pills. If the damage from the severed arm could not be fully healed, Xuandi's cultivation would be stuck at the quasi-saint level, forever unable to reach the realm of a saint. This was troubling news for Laozi. A solution needed to be found. Upon hearing Laozi's words, Xuandi's gaze also fell on his severed arm, a flash of resentment in his eyes. Gu Changsheng. How did the Jie sect produce such a figure at the level of Dou Jingxian? What pained Xuandu the most was that Gu Changsheng was a disciple of Tongtian. Compared to Gu Changsheng, Xuandu, as the chief disciple of the human sect, was insignificant. Gritting his teeth, Xuandu said, "It's fine. I believe I'll find a WA eventually." Just as Laozi was about to respond, he suddenly looked toward the entrance of Baoji Palace. A figure was approaching from outside. It was Yuanxi. After leaving War Palace and having a discussion with Santi, Yuanxi had decided to visit Laozi. After all, it was originally the 4 saints and 3 sects who had joined forces to deal with the Jie sect. Now that the Jie sect was on the offensive, how could Laozi stay out of it? However, Laozi did not welcome Yuanxi warmly. "What brings you to Baoji Palace?" Laozi asked coldly. If it weren't for Yuanxi's intentional actions at Killing Cliff, Xuandu wouldn't have lost an arm. Yuanxi had anticipated Laozi's reaction, but it didn't bother him. He was prepared. When he had gone to the Western sect to ask for Kong Zuan's help, he had done so under the pretense of their teacher's orders. This he could do the same with Laozi. Yuanxi's gaze first fell on Xuandu. Xuandi's injuries had healed so quickly he had forgotten about Laozi's expertise in alchemy. Calmly, Yuanxi began, "I'm here for 2 reasons. First, Gu Changsheng severely injured Guanqingzi at 9 Immortals Mountain. Our teacher has ordered me to ask you for a healing pill. At the current pace, who knows when Guanqingzi would recover. But with Laozi's pills, everything could change." Laozi looked puzzled. Teacher's orders. Before Laozi could speak, Yuanxi continued, "Second, the Jiejiao sect is currently assisting Emperor Xin in restoring order in Ziki. Our teacher has commanded you, along with the 2 Western saints, to assist me in sending the Jie sect disciples to the list, so we can complete the investiture of the gods as soon as possible." As soon as Yuanxi finished speaking, Laozi outright refused. "I can give you the pill, but I won't assist your Chan sect. The human sect had few disciples to begin with, and sending anyone to help Yuanxi now would be too risky. What if something went wrong?" Laozi wasn't willing to let his disciples end up on the investiture of the gods list, only to become mere gods in the heavenly court. Laozi had left himself some room to maneuver. Yuanxi had asked for 2 things, and Laozi was willing to grant one. Even if this was supposedly the teacher's order, Yuanxi couldn't argue with that. As he spoke, Laozi casually waved his hand, handing Yuanxi a pill. Yuanxi accepted the pill, but his expression turned sour. With Nua's involvement, the Western sect couldn't act. If the human sect also refused to participate, that would leave only the Chan sect. That wasn't acceptable. Yuan Shu spoke in a serious tone. "If you're concerned about Gu Changsheng, you needn't worry. After the battle at 9 Immortals Mountain, Gu Changsheng injured Guanqingzi and attracted the attention of our teacher. The teacher has already forbidden Gu Changsheng from taking action again, so as time, you'll only be dealing with Jiang Ziya and the other Jie sect disciples." Yuanxi had hoped that this would make Laozi reconsider. But Laozi's stance remained firm. "If Gu Changsheng can take action, then your Chan sect should be able to handle it. And if not, there's always the Western sect. Why come to the human sect?" Laozi was determined not to let his disciples get involved. At this moment, however, Xuandu stepped forward. "Master, Uncle Yuanxi," he said, "I am willing to go. Originally, Xuandu had no interest in the investiture of the gods, but after being injured by Gu Changsheng, it was clear that seeking revenge on Gu Changsheng was not possible for now. But he could take out his anger on the other Jie sect disciples, like Yang Xiao or Big Xiao. Yuanxi was overjoyed at hearing this. In that case, head straight to Sishui Pass, Yuan's high instructed. With Xuandu involved, Jiang Ziya should be able to stabilize the situation. All that was needed was to kill a few Jie sect disciples to fill the list. Without giving Laozi a chance to respond, Yuanxi turned and left. Laozi was left speechless. He had tried to keep Xuandu from taking risks, yet Xuandu had volunteered himself. So be it. With a wave of his right hand, Laozi handed Xuandu a magical treasure, and cautioned, be careful. If things go wrong, don't worry about the Chan sect, focus on your own safety. Xuandu accepted the treasure. The Anna will return to prepare and head to Sishui Pass. With that, Xuandu left. Laozi sighed deeply. He could only hope that nothing would go wrong this time. With Gu Changsheng out of the picture, there should be no one among the Jie sect disciples who could easily defeat Xuandu. 3 days later, Sishui Pass. Inside the camp, Jiang Ziya wore a bitter expression. He had retreated to Sishui Pass on his master's orders. Yesterday, Shen Gongbao and his group had already arrived outside Sishui Pass, and it wouldn't be long before the Jie sect made their move. But on his side, the reinforcements his master had mentioned were nowhere to be seen. What should he do? Should he just abandon Sishui Pass? As Jiang Ziya wrestled with indecision, a figure walked in from outside.